Well, hey everybody, it is Romania Black, and we are practically halfway through Bocchi the Rock. Why? How are we there? I don't like it. I don't accept it, and I'm not a fan. So at least we have 6 more weeks after this week of Bocchi the Rock, which is fine. I'm all about that. So we're gonna savor it for as long as we can, right? But man, it has been warm and humid out today, and I am not ready to turn on my air conditioning yet because, as you all probably can relate, I don't like to pay a high electric bill in the summer. And so I usually hold off until the very last minute, like until my dogs, it's mainly my dogs. Like I could sweat it out and be fine. Once my dogs start panting in my house and it's like 80 degrees in here, I'm like, maybe I should turn it up because where I live in the world, it's not only hot, but it's really humid, which is not fun. So those of you that live across the pond and don't do air conditioning, your bodies have acclimated to it, I'm sure. But I'm right on the edge. I'm like, we're about ready to turn on the AC, but I'm going to save that electric bill just a little bit longer if I can. So we have quite a few comments that we need to get to before we start this episode. Starvin AA, back in episode 1, says there's a lot of parallels with this first episode and Otto's real life. The parents giving her a studio in her closet, being a totally alone in school, running a cover channel on the internet. That's all really interesting. I like that there's these parallels that we're adopting right off the bat with the series, right? I think that's pretty cool. Kaguya6900 for episode 3 says the series director for Bocchi season 2 is going to be the episode director from episode 3 and also directs episode 11. So we have something to look forward to when we get to it. I really like the storytelling in this episode, which is why I'm not destroyed that the director for season 1 didn't come back for season 2. Although the director is still going to be doing season 2 of Free Run. I am kind of sad about it. Yeah, I'm a Taurus, so change bothers me. So I can understand the sentiment of if you really like an art director, having them not come back for season 2. However, I liked episode 3. So I feel very confident that that's going to be, and I'm excited to see episode 11. So my thing is, at least if the art directors know the style from the mangaka and are able to adapt it well, I think that should be fine. And the fact that they have some seasoned experience on the series already, I think helps out a lot. So I'm excited for that. There's a video on YouTube, in Japanese unfortunately, where the manga author and her professional guitarist friend are watching the episode of Bocchi giving comments. And during the comments for episode 3, the author notes that she never considered Bocchi's strands of hair sticking out to be bedhead, but she seemed to have no problem with the anime's interpretation that her little strand sticking out is basically bedhead that Bocchi covers up with those cube-like hair ornaments. See, that's why literary immediacy matters, and that's why it's kind of cool that the author's like, it's one of those things where sometimes when you create something and then people read it and they're like, oh, that's a really cool interpretation, and you're like, I hadn't even thought of that. So again, sometimes the fandom thinks of things that the authors hadn't even considered. So I like that the author is willing to just like roll with it and go, yes, of course, sure. And then Mobster Hamaji is even funnier than you think. The author for Bocchi the Rock is Aki Hamaji. She officially spells it Hamazi, but pronounces it Hamaji. Oh, that's cute. That's a cute little self-referential thing. I like that. I like that a lot. Kumire, for episode 4, along with Kelvin, said that matching the big development between Bocchi and Rio, the new ED in episode 4 is sung by Rio's voice actor Saku Mizuno. That's cool. I like that a lot. I think that they have a great voice. And then Kelvin for episode 4 says that there have been some mini songs so far in episodes 1 through 3. And I just wanted to tell you the titles of them because the titles crack me up a lot. There is Oshiri Yori Ai no Komete, which is With Love from the Closet. The Cocktail no Uda, or the cocktail song. The Kaze Hike no Uda, which is the song for catching a cold, which that one I really loved. And then there's Double Kokorekishi Bocchi Hikatikatari version, which is the Double Dark Past Bocchi acoustic version. I do remember that from the episode. Then there is the Sono Hi Haida Shinjin Yori Su Kainai Dame Baito no Elegy. This is probably my favorite song title so far, which is Elegy of the Part-Time Worker Who Lost Her Identity to the Just Arrived Newbie. Girl, your song titling skills are unparalleled. Unparalleled. And then we finally have Vera Yamura for episode 5. They were talking about on Discord that there are 2 potential bands that are on Saika's laptop, and they're actually parroting. One is Ryoko Shoku Shakai, which is the band that sings the Apothecary Diaries first OP, and Dungeon Meshi's ED number 1 and 2 is Macaroni and Pizzu. That's so funny. I love that. I love that the show is adding inside jokes that are referencing bands that are actually singing OP and EDs for the anime. Amazing. Now, if you got those actual bands to come on the episodes, that would be like the icing, the cherry on the cake. But for now, I think that that's super, super cute. So yeah, I am loving all the comments so far on Bocchi the Rock. You all are having so much fun with it. And this show makes me laugh. And I'll be honest, I have felt terrible all this morning. Like, this is late afternoon when I'm recording, but I've had 3 really stressful end of the semester days, and it's one of those situations where you know that stress just keeps piling up and you kind of go into survival mode and you just push through, and when the event is over, it's like all that stress just kind of like cascades down like a wall on top of you. And my voice was starting to get shot, and I was like, I don't want a repeat of episode 2. I don't want a repeat of episode 2. It's been a month. I don't want that, but I'm not quite there yet. But I just felt like garbage this morning, and it really threw off my entire day. I wasn't even planning on watching Bocchi the Rock today, but as soon as I started feeling better, I'm like, I need something happy, and I really only have time to watch stuff on the channel. So I'm like, Bocchi the Rock it is. So I hope you all enjoy this reaction and discussion, but let's not waste any more time. With that being said, we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive into Bocchi the Rock, episode 6, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. This was such a good episode. I am getting the hype. I am getting the hype of Bocchi the Rock. I really am. And each episode, it just gets better and better. So the humor of this series is such a selling point. And I did not walk into this episode, or this series for that matter, realizing how much of a comedy it was going to be. I mean, people have recommended Bocchi the Rock for a long, long time now. But usually those recommendations weren't like, which I'm glad, because I like going in blind and not, knowing what I'm getting into, and then it being a very pleasant surprise, because everybody had been like, oh, Bocchi the Rock is really, really good. And I thought, okay, well, it seems like a slice of life show. Sometimes those are comedies, but comedy is such a subjective thing. And case in point, my dad and my mother have very different senses of humor. Things that my mom finds funny, my dad's like, no. And things my dad finds funny, my mom's like, that's stupid. So they have very different senses of humor. But my brother and I, we share my dad's sense of humor. My mom's like, So, I mean, like, humor's subjective. It will land for people and it won't land for people. This series, it lands for me so well. But yeah, this recap where we open up with the glasses and the disco ball. And then I love the little guitar animation in 2D, in like the very simplistic 2D, like just recapping, saying Hattori Goto is a slightly shy, socially anxious, isolated guitar enthusiast, because we know she's going to be a popular person later on, so we can't frame her too much. But I love the guitar as my friend. Someday I might join a band. I love they frame it like it's not quite accurate how they frame her in this opening thing. And then I love everything is so over dramatized to have her band and everything. And they're like, her life's been one event after the other. I love Saika is portrayed as such the evil villain, the manager's menacing authority. I love it. And then they all work together Sailor Moon style to overcome Queen Beryl. It's great. And then it's like happiness bloomed. Or so they thought, but she had one towering wall before her. The ticket quota. God, I love it. I love that she's like, what will you do, Tori? And her despondent spirit knocks the guitar into the water. God, that was funny. That was so funny. So then she's like with her mom, her dog, her sister, and her dog. And she's wondering if she needs to sell one ticket to her grandmother, but they're like, no, she lives 3 hours away. That's not going to work. I love their house is set up just like the most basic house. It's very generic. There's like the welcome sign and like the little bicycle thing for letter holders. It's very simple. I like the dad is cooking. I love that. Go dad's cooking. But I think personally that Bocchi must get her kind of like shy, introverted side from her dad because he seems like the more shy, introverted side. And her sense of extremism when it comes to her humor kind of seems like when he was holding the exorcism beads, it seems to come from him because her mom seems like her sister, where they are totally socially okay with everybody and having like a social circle and everything. Whereas Bocchi seems more like her dad. Mm-hmm. And she's like, Jimmy Hen, which is the dog, can't come, right? Mm-hmm. And Futari can't go to a club like that either. She's only 5. So there's like a 10-year gap between her and her sister, which is a pretty big gap for siblings. A pretty big gap indeed. Mm-hmm. Because I'm assuming she's like 15. So there's a pretty big gap with her and her sister. But yeah. So then it says the Starry Night. So it says Ahoge Kasoku Band, Macaroni Pencil, the Ryokoshu Yasai, all 4 bands in alphabetical order. It opens at, what is 1800? That's 12. So 6 o'clock is when it opens. And then they go on from there. Okay. Advance is 1,500 yen at the door. So you're saving 500 yen if you have the tickets. And you get a +1 drink. Okay. So now she's like, I have to sell 3 tickets. I love when it goes into Microsoft Paint mode. That's so good. But then the mom's like, well, I could invite my friends. And then the sister says, well, it's not like Bocchi has friends of her own. The humor of her saying like, you know what? I have lots of friends at school. Actually, you should be a little bit more. You shouldn't say that even as a joke and be a little more empathetic. That's such a sibling move to do. I fully relate to that. It's such a sibling move. Except I would be the one that would not be as introverted as my brother. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no, I've got lots of friends. I'll be fine. Just you wait for that concert. And then sure enough, we see the girls 2 of the girls, I think, no, they're different. Some of them end up buying concert tickets, but those are not the girls that walk by in the yukatas. But it says, yeah, I love the little handmade posters that she draws. I read online that stuff with a handmade feel comes across as more charming. I do love the little flyers. They're super cute. I'm assuming Bocchi's the one in the middle, and then Rio has the blue. I'm assuming that Nijika has the red bow, and then Kita has a little pink there, and she's like grabbing a hold of Rio. That seems to make sense. But then, yeah, she falls. Good thing she doesn't have a concussion. And then all of her friends start texting her bandmates, and Kita, of course, has all her friends coming. She's all good to go. Rio sold her tickets, which meant that she went probably to a restaurant that she eats at and sold them there. And then Nijika is like, yeah, are you coming to practice? I like Nijika doesn't boast whether she has her tickets sold or not, so maybe she doesn't, but I'm assuming she does. And she's like, what do I say back? Do I pretend I'm okay and got the quota, or do I admit that I don't? And of course, she assumes that they'll ditch her if she doesn't sell the tickets. And then we see like her replacement, which is the rock and roll Jesus version of her with the feather wing guitar, which is pretty badass, I will admit. But yeah, she's like, do I just accept my mom's help? And that's when we meet our magenta-haired woman, who we don't know the name of, but she has the varsity jacket, the black bow, the black nails, and the absolute Hemingway-style alcoholism to go with her, and the sandals to go with her band persona. Mm-hmm. I need hangover medicine, some miso soup with clams, and preferably in a bed dress with freshly lined dried sheets. I love her humor. She's chaos. She is demanding and chaos. Which, you know what? I want to talk about a couple things. One, I feel like the magenta-haired girl, the bassist, we'll call her the bassist. I feel like her personality is kind of an introvert's dream in a weird way, because I'm kind of attracted to, friendship-wise, people who are really over the top and dramatic myself, because I'm not that way. So they kind of like, I kind of am enthralled by them. I just people watching kind of just feed off of their energy. But in a weird way, not as an extrovert, but just like I like that personality. I find it interesting. But I feel like there's less pressure when you're around people like that because a lot of Bocchi's anxiety is from the fact that she doesn't know how to interact in Bocchi's view socially normally. So she doesn't think she has the ability to act within normal parameters of social interaction. So when you're around people that are kind of over the top and seemingly like extra, they are kind of, they feel very, there's like a kinship there in the weirdest of ways, because if you're really introverted and socially anxious, you feel like something's wrong with you and you're not able to interact with society properly. But then when you're with somebody that's really over the top, they're kind of like you, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, where they're so extra and over the top that the normies don't know what to do with them. So you kind of end up being in the same bubble, just on totally opposite sides. And I think that's kind of cool. So I feel like because our bassist is so extreme, Bocchi feels like it's okay to talk to her and interact with her because she's like, well, you're kind of like me, just on the opposite end of the spectrum. But who knows, right? The other thing I was going to point out is that I can totally relate to the idea. I could see somebody saying that it seems weird that Bocchi can't sell the other tickets, like just go sell them. The last 2 years, mind you, this is a public speaking team that I coach who get up in front of audiences on a weekly to monthly basis at tournaments, performing in front of large audiences that have no stage fright when they're performing, kind of like Bocchi has no stage fright when she's actually in the groove on stage in a band. When I tell them we have to sell tickets to our fundraiser, our one fundraiser for the year to raise money for nationals, they're all like, oh, selling tickets, but I don't know a soul. And I'm like, go out and talk to people. And you think I'm asking for them to go chop off their hand and put it in a basket and give it back to me. Like, it was so hard the last 2 years to get people to sell tickets. And they'd be like, well, outside of my family, I don't know anybody. I'm like, well, go around the school and sell them to the teachers. And again, you would have thought that I asked them to chop their own arm off. So I totally understand the social anxiety, especially of, I feel, people in a post-COVID generation that have been isolated and maybe are just like, talk to people. So, and it honestly is a skill, and it's uncomfortable. Part of my job, part of my real life job is to make cold calls to people about signing up for classes. It is the most awkward, uncomfortable thing to be like, hey, what you doing? And try to give like a sales pitch. So uncomfortable, but you do it. And luckily there's like a foam barrier there. So if it's awkward, they just hang up. But yeah, I can imagine asking them in real life. So I get it. I've never heard of this hangover medicine, Yoi Shaki. For those of you who actually used Yoi Shaki, is it actually effective at curing a hangover? I mean, the clam miso soup makes sense why you would want to drink it, because all of the salt will like get in there if you are hungover, right to the liver. Which, although she gets the hangover medicine, gets the soup, and then she immediately starts drinking hair of the dog. That seems so counterintuitive. If you have hair of the dog, which the idea of hair of the dog is that you start drinking liquor to get because what it is your body's having withdrawals sometimes when you have the hangover. So if you just get a little bit drunk again, it like staves it off a little bit, which is not always a cure. But I'm like, I don't know if that is going to just counteract everything you just did, but okay. She's like, I want to take my head off and power wash it. And I want to take my guts out and wring out all the alcohol. Girl, been there. Up until 2024. It was pretty much summer of 2024. Was the last time I went, maybe even 2023, was the last time I really went on a trip with some girls that I knew. And and I didn't have that much to drink. I had like 2 drinks. And that apparently was enough, because the next day my body felt like my head was being power washed and my guts were being just wrung out from the inside, and my whole body like was resetting itself. And at that point I was like, yeah, I probably don't need to drink. My body is probably repelling all this alcohol for a reason. So I probably need to stop drinking it. And so I did. And I haven't had a hangover since then. So that's good. because hangovers suck. So some people can handle like alcohol like it's nobody's business and never gonna hangover. Those people I'm envious of. How dare they? But yeah, she asked for Bocchi's name. She never gives Bocchi her name. So I'm wondering if she is in a band, a pretty famous band. I'm wondering because she doesn't give Bocchi her name. Like I wonder if she doesn't want to be known. But yeah, she says drinking should be done in moderation. She said as she started drinking again, so she's self-aware of her alcoholism. Because yeah, she has the Onikoro sake, and then she's drinking out of a bottle of it, and then she has the juice boxes as well, which although juice box alcohol is interesting. We have boxed wine in the US, so I guess that makes about sense. And she's like, it's the cheap stuff. She's like, oh, you're underage, are you listening? And then she just goes over the statue. I like Bocchi. She's like, well, now's my chance to leave. I should book it out. And she nearly falls and the girl helps her. I'm in an indie band. Of course you are. I worry a little bit about our bassist because she seems like a functioning alcoholic. She seems depressed. So I feel for her and I kind of worry about her situation a little bit. And we just met her. I'm like, Bocchi, I don't want her to be a bad influence on Bocchi, but at the same time, I want Bocchi to be a good influence on her. So we'll see where that goes, of course. And she's like, oh, do you play? And at first she lies to her because she thinks she'll like not think she's worthy as a person who has more experience. But then I was like, well, that's her dad guitar. I thought she was going to for a second like offer to buy it. And I was like, huh? But instead, she like gets really sincere in that moment and says, don't give up after one day. Just stick with it a little while longer and you might become worthy of that guitar. Which is super, super sweet. So, I mean, she seems like a good person. I just am a little concerned about her alcoholism being played as a joke because I'm like, yikes. If you know someone that is an alcoholic, it's not a joke. But so that makes me a little bit more concerned about her character. And so she gets the guitar and says, booze and the bass are worth more to me than my life. And that's a little bit sad. Not the bass part, but the fact that she doesn't have a lot of self-worth is pretty sad. And then she says she left her bass at the pub. I like when she drags Bocchi along and she's just like with the guitar in hand. I'm like, I would be careful of that guitar. Don't drop it. So speaking of concern, I love that Najika and the others are worried that they overdid it and put too much pressure on Bocchi, which they kind of did inadvertently, but I don't think they meant to do that. But I like that they don't get mad at Bocchi for missing the practice because in a lesser show, that would have been a point of contention and needless drama. And we ain't got time for needless drama. So I'm glad the show doesn't make any. It's just like, no, she just didn't come to practice. And they understand Bocchi and kind of her shyness and her social anxiety. And they're like, well, we'll just be nice to her tomorrow and you know, talk to her and make sure we didn't overwhelm her and all of that. But they hope she's okay. I like they hope she's okay, but they don't go running off looking for her. They respect that she's, you know, a teenager like them, but she's responsible. So then she has her bass. Which does seem like a pretty bitchin' bass. I like it. I like the design of it. What does she say it is? A Super Ultra Shuten Doji X. I want to look up Shuten Doji X bass. Okay. I wonder if that's a type of bass. Is it a special kind of bass? How much is it? Cost. Dun, 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 dun. I want to know. Da, da, da. I just want to know the bass guitar. What kind is it? Does it say? I just want to know what kind of bass. It's not telling me, and I don't want to get into spoilers, so now I have to wait. Somebody in the comments will tell. I don't want to know spoilers, so I'm going to just... Somebody in the comments will tell me, because all of these links are wanting to get me into the episode, and I don't want to talk about that. No. So she talks about them having a concert. What did she say? She said, we rocked the house at our concert last night, but I drank too much at the after party. And next thing I knew, the sun was up and I had no idea where I was. She's like, well, how many hours did you spend drinking? And she's like, well, let's see. So the after party started at 10. So here we have a picture of her, and there's a bunch of people eating at the bar. She's got her arm around someone I assume is either her bandmate or girlfriend, because she looks like kind of questionable about her arm being there. And then as it goes, she keeps drinking and everybody's cheering her on. But the one girl behind her, I'm assuming it's a girl, it might be a guy, is behind her kind of being annoyed at the fact that she's still drinking. And then she's like still drinking with two other girls. And then things get fuzzier as she runs off with her guitar. Okay. And she's like, I might as well just stay up till tonight. And Bocchi's like, wow, I don't think Bocchi's ever met an alcoholic before. So she's like, you really like drinking that much? And she's like, yeah, it lets me forget everything. And she's like, everything? She's like fears about the future. And so I got a little concerned at the moment because I didn't want Bocchi to get the idea that if she started drinking, she would forget about her social anxiety. I was like, no, girl, that's not a cure for you. Don't go down that rabbit hole. Don't do that gateway. And she's like, pension problems, rural depopulation, the poverty gap, which are all legitimate concerns. You know, loss of lifetime careers, job searches, depression, rural depopulation, helplessness, old age, poverty gap, stressful society, caregiving, pension crisis, marriage, fears about the future, low wages. These are all very realistic fears that we all have at some point in our lives or to various capacities. But then she says, I call it the happiness spiral, which is I'm unable to think of anything but alcohol, which is a problem. I'm out of alcohol. The alcohol is gone. I fidget, which is called withdrawal. I got to go get booze. Life is pain. My body builds up a tolerance, so I have to drink more. The craving is temporarily satisfied, and then I'm back in this spiral. Yeah, the happiness spiral is called alcoholism, and it's not good for you. Nobody should resort to alcoholism. There are better ways. Yeah. And like, kids, try this at home. No, do not try this at home. And yeah, I like Bocchi saying this is a very sad kind of happiness. Yeah, it's not good. And it's a little bit depressing. And I feel a little bit for our bassist. She's like, it doesn't ring true. You'll understand when you're older. I hate that phrase. I hate that phrase so much. I hate it so much. I don't like that you'll understand when you're older. Because it's very condescending in a way, because one, it assumes that a child or a teenager hasn't had it as rough as adults, which is a statement full of lots of logical fallacies. There are some kids that I have as students that are younger than me who have been through more shit than I will hopefully ever have to be through. So that instantly proves that phrase wrong. There are some people I went to school with when I was in grade school that went through more bad things than I ever could imagine. So whenever somebody says you'll understand when you're older, I'm like, some adults have never had any problems. Some adults have never had any hardships. Not really. But then there's a lot of kids who have gone through more than any older person that they're near. And so I'm like, that phrase just reeks of condescension, and I just cannot take it. Like, yeah, when you get older, you will experience adulthood, and there's a lot of hardships with adulthood. There's a lot of things to make you sad. But at the same time, it's just, I don't like that phrase at all. And she's like, well, I'd really rather I didn't. She's like, you'll be super into drinking, I bet. I can tell by looking at your face. That's a terrifying thing to say to somebody. And Bocchi's like, what would I be like as a drunk? And we instantly find out that I'm glad Bocchi is self-aware that drinking would be very bad for her, because she would just spiral and just stay inside. And it says like, scary stories about booze. Scary stories about booze, indoor, outdoor, warping dimensions. My wallet feels lighter. I wake up to find injury, forgetfulness, impromptu karaoke. She's like, I like that she assumes that her sister's going to have kids and everything, but she is not. That's interesting. I don't know if that goes into like the asexual allegations. But yeah, she starts to get sad and starts to cry because she doesn't think she can like face her family anymore. And she's like drinking this strong lemon liqueur. I'm glad that Bocchi instantly is like, no, I really don't want to be an alcoholic. So I'm glad she's talked herself out of that immediately. Right? Which, you know, I don't like alcoholism because I've known a lot of families and it's been a really hard thing and a bad thing. I still like our magenta bassist, but I do feel sad that she's like an alcoholic. And she's like, oh, I kind of like you losing your head. I like you being all crazy. She's like, what were you doing? And then she talks about the whole band thing. And she's like, she takes off her jacket being like, we're going to have a concert right here, right now to sell some tickets on the street. This girl clearly has worked from the street and knows how things work. And she has that feel of like working up the ladder. So, and I do like how our bassist is very open to, Bocchi and her anxieties, and she's just like, it's all right, we'll just work through it. But again, her phone being cracked and everything, I like whoever she calls just brings her the stuff, like doesn't question. She's like, yeah, I'm not dead, I'm great. Like clearly that person knows she's been through this before. So, but yeah, I think that Bocchi gets some courage. I don't think it's just from the bassist. I think Bocchi has been building up courage the last several episodes to reach this point, but I also feel because the bassist doesn't make her feel any pressure, she's just so easygoing and kind of crazy about it that Bocchi feels kind of like it's all right to let loose because this woman's not going to judge her. She comes across maybe as a little bit more pathetic than Bocchi, and that might help her to feel like she's not, she can go for it. But yeah, she's like, we're going to play. I like she tells Bocchi she can close her eyes and if that will help. And so she ends up opening one eye and keeping the other closed. But I love this idea that she says to her. She's like, just so you know, you're not in combat with the people in front of you. I love it. She says, out there, don't get it twisted who your enemies are. I felt like I was watching Vinland Saga, like you have no enemies, which is true. People that come to see your band want to see you perform. People that come to watch you want to support you. They are there to be your support, not your enemies. If they're not going to listen to you, they're going to walk away. Especially in a situation like this where it's free. They're not watching you to boo and hiss. They're watching because they want to support you. And I like that she phrases that to her that way, and that kind of gives her some courage later on, especially when the one girl's like, keep up the good work, you're doing great. So meanwhile, Nijika and Rio ask Kita how Bocchi is in class. And Kita basically says what we all know. She's like, she's not being bullied or anything. She's just quiet and closed off from everybody. But she also doesn't invite herself out when like Kita and them go. She's withdrawn and has trouble with people interacting with her. And they're like, but Bocchi's so fun. I love that they say that. They're like, well, Bocchi's really fun. Why would they not want to interact with her? Why would she close herself off? That's kind of the sad thing. A lot of times people that are a lot of fun and they doubt themselves and they kind of get in this sort of doom spiral with their own ego and their own sense of self-worth. And they don't realize that they're actually amazing people. And that's so sad. Like it makes you want to cry because Bocchi's so cool. I love it. I also like how she's sitting down playing the bass the whole time with like the little thing that you would, you play a biwa with it. I love that. I love it. It feels so chaotic, but yet like professional and cool. I love it. She's like, she sticks with me when I have guitar practice, but when I invite her to lunch with my friends, she won't come. And she's never in her classroom. But then we get to them doing the concert. And I like that. I love that. Okay, the magenta guitar bassist is really good. And you can tell she's really good because she just ad-libs to play alongside Bocchi. And that's not easy. Like for her to immediately pick up what Bocchi's putting down and match it, that's pretty impressive. So I'm very curious about that, right? Hearing her play, I can tell she's having fun. She's like, I'm too scared to look up. And that's when the one girl tells her, she's like, you're doing great. You're doing great, sweetie. The guitar girl seemed nervous, so it just came out. Yeah, people naturally want to support people and be kind, right? It doesn't always seem that way, especially on the internet. But okay, so I liked that there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The idea of 8 views, I wondered what the title 8 views meant, but I thought maybe it meant that there were originally only 8 people watching them, and that's where she got that from, was that there's only 8 people in the crowd that were watching them play. And again, just like Saika, our magenta bassist immediately recognizes that Bocchi's got some moves. which is really cool. Yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 with the kid. There's 8 people watching them in the audience. Nice. When I saw 8 views, I was thinking of like views on a video on the internet. So I was thinking it was going to be something to do with her channel. But no, this is much better. There are people here. The only people here are the ones who stop to hear you play. They want to support you. Mm-hmm. I love that she's like, you realized and conquered your flaws in such a short time. That's amazing. I love her design. If I didn't already have my Rio cosplay packed and ready to go, I would have cosplayed as her. But maybe for another convention one day, right? Because that would not be a hard cosplay. That would actually be pretty easy to get the green dress and the varsity jacket. That might be something to work on. But yeah, I love that. That looks so good. My instinct never lies. I don't know where she fits on the Punnett square. She seems introverted, but she's super confident. So she seems like if Rio and Kita mixed together in the weirdest way. She seems kind of like Kita, where she's just instantly relatable to people and fearless, but she also seems kind of like a loner too, like Rio. So she seems like Rio and Kita mixed together. As I spill my tea all over me. Oh no. But yeah, my instinct never lies. That'll be interesting. If she is in a very professional band, they might get her to open for them, which would be super stellar, especially if she comes and watches their concert. That might be interesting. She's like, if I do more concerts, will I see more faces like these? Yeah, you will. I love that look Bocchi has where she's just smiling very serenely off in the distance. That's super cute. And then seeing everybody watching them. I am curious about the idea of our magenta bassist living out of her suitcase. However, if she's in a popular band and they travel around and they're on tour, then that would make more sense as well. That she just kind of lives out of her suitcase because she's always on the road traveling. Mm-hmm. And so she's like, I can't change everything all at once. And that's when the girls come up and ask for tickets. Which, hey, her experience in the bar has served her good because they all ask for tickets and she's able to, she only falls down and she remains conscious after she falls down. So that's good. We've got improvement. And then, yeah, she's like, I'll do my best. And then she has the one ticket left to sell. She's like, to think I had this shining period once myself. She's like, why are you crying? I'll be back in my happiness spiral soon. Uh-huh. She's like, that can't possibly be good for you. And it's not. I like that this is the most professional, polite cop and they call him so mad. I was like, oh, girl, you ain't been to America. This man was like the most polite officer ever. He was just like, you guys can't play here, so you need to leave. Which, granted, okay, look, I make fun of American policemen being a little bit aggressive sometimes, but we do have security at the school that I work at, and they would have been like this guy. They would have been like, hey, you guys can't be here. So that would have been the same. It's just the fact that they're like, he was really mad. I was like, well, he seemed pretty reasonable to me. She's like, let's just call it quits. And so, yeah, she's like, I have one ticket left. She's like, I'll buy the last one. And then, of course, she's kind of like Rio. Again, Rio and Kita mixed together, where she's like, I don't have the money to get on the train after I buy the ticket. Mm-hmm. Let's play together again sometime. I'm sure she's actually part of a really famous band, and Bocchi just doesn't even know. But who knows? Maybe not. She's like, why are rockers all so poor? Well, because there's not a lot of money at the beginning with it, and you got to work your way up till you make that money. Mm-hmm. I do love that Bocchi is able to see the fireworks from where she's sitting through the grates, but she's off by herself. Like, it is kind of like a very indicative of her character where she can still see the events. She's just off in an isolated area. I also love they don't believe that she sold the tickets, which I'm like, she'll be able to tell them when she meets up with them. And then we have the end credits. What a great episode. I am in love with the new bassist character. I think she's fabulous. I absolutely am all about it. So, But yeah, so I'm recording this right before I go to the convention my brother and I are going to. I won't get to episode 7 before we go. So hopefully when we get back, I'll at least maybe share some pictures on here and in the Discord. I would like to make a video about our convention experience and have cosplay pictures in that, but it'll just depend on when that video will come out. Will depend on like lots of factors with editing and planning and stuff like that. But in the meantime, I am excited to hear your comments down below. I can't wait for Bocchi episode 7. It's going to be so much fun. But in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yes, I will be back very soon with more of Bocchi the Rock.